The sun dipped low over Coronado Naval Base as two security officers stepped in front of the entrance to the graduation hall. The man they stopped wore a ripped jacket that smelled of salt water and ground in dust. His hands, rough, scarred, and shaking, held a creased invitation with his son's name printed across it. One guard grimaced. The other lifted his radio. But before either could speak, the man's sleeve slipped just enough to expose something that instantly changed the air between them. Faded coordinates. An old trident and a name whispered through Navy SEAL lore, like a legend that never quite died. Before we go on, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, tell us where you're joining from in the comments below. And if stories of courage, sacrifice, and second chances resonate with you, consider subscribing. Your support allows us to keep sharing powerful true stories that honor the heroes too often forgotten. Now back to James Colton. James hadn't slept in a real bed for 6 years. His nights were spent beneath bridges, in doorways, or on park benches, until police nudged him along. His home was a concrete recess under the Coronado Bridge, where cold winds sliced through the dark and traffic thundered overhead without pause. Everything he owned fit inside a weathered military backpack. A framed photo of his son at 8 years old, smiling wide with a missing front tooth. A purple heart wrapped in black cloth that he never showed anyone. And a cracked portable radio that once belonged to his closest friend, Marcus Reed. Marcus, who died in James's arms in Fallujah, while James screamed into the radio for a medevac that arrived too late. James hadn't always been invisible. Once, he was Master Chief James Colton Call, Sign Reaper SEAL, Team 6, 3 deployments to Iraq. 2 to Afghanistan. Expert in underwater demolitions and hostile infiltration, he led missions that would never see daylight, pulled teammates out of places no one was meant to survive, and carried a reputation that made even hardened operators fall silent when his name surfaced. The only easy day was yesterday. That phrase was tattooed on his forearm beneath GPS, coordinates marking the place where he dragged 8 wounded men 4 kilometers through enemy fire. 3 never made it out. Marcus was one of them. The PTSD crept in quietly then all at once. Nightmares that jolted him awake swinging. Flashbacks triggered by fireworks and backfiring cars. The VA offered prescriptions and appointments that went nowhere. Paperwork, delays, months of waiting. He tried to work construction. Tried to be a father to Aiden. Tried to keep himself together. But the rage came in waves he couldn't stop. And the guilt was worse. 6 years ago, James made a choice. He walked away. He convinced himself his son would be better off without a broken father. That disappearing was an act of love. It wasn't. It was surrender. After that, he lived quietly. Never stole. Never caused trouble. He helped other homeless veterans find shelters or shared food when he had it. He avoided mirrors. Avoided memories. Avoided the man he used to be. Then, 2 months ago, everything changed. Under a park bench, he found a crumpled Flyer SEAL graduation ceremony, Class 342. At the bottom, in small print, a list of names. Aiden Michael Colton, his son. The boy he hadn't seen in 6 years. About to become a SEAL, James walked 43 miles to Coronado. 2 days on foot, sleeping in bus stops, drinking from public fountains, his boots filled with blood. His ribs ached with every breath. He didn't care. He wasn't going to miss this. He didn't plan to speak to Aiden, didn't plan to embarrass him. He just needed to see him once to know his son had made it. By the time he reached the base, families were streaming through the gates. Mothers held flowers. Fathers wore old Navy caps from their own service days. James stood at the edge of the parking lot, staring at his reflection in a car window. Hollow cheeks, tangled hair. A beard untouched for months. A man the world had forgotten. As the ceremony neared, he finally stepped forward. 2 guards manned the checkpoint. Tyler Marks, 28, by-the-book and fresh-faced. And Brent Cole, 31, older and harder around the edges. They exchanged a look as James approached. "Sir, do you have identification?" Tyler asked. James handed over the invitation, wrinkled, stained with old coffee or mud. Tyler frowned as he read it. "Guest of Aiden Colton. Are you family?" "I'm his father." Brent stepped closer. You got ID to prove that? James hesitated. His license expired years ago. He had no documents. Just a photo buried in his pack and a name that didn't carry weight anymore. I don't, he said softly. I'll sit in the back. I won't cause trouble. Tyler glanced at Brent. Brent glanced at the growing line of families behind them. Rules said no ID, no entry. But something in the man's posture, something in his eyes made Tyler pause. Wait here, Tyler said, turning to radio command. Inside the auditorium at that exact moment, Admiral Catherine Hayes was reviewing the roster. Preparing a speech on legacy and sacrifice words only one man outside truly understood. Tyler returned a minute later. You can enter. Sit in the back. Your belongings, stay with security. James nodded. He handed over his backpack. Brent opened it, briefly saw the photo. The metal then zipped it shut and handed James a claim ticket without a word. Thank you, James murmured. The auditorium gleamed white under the fading sun. Inside, voices hummed. Chairs scraped. A brass band warmed up. James's heart pounded. He hadn't been on a military base in over a decade. It felt like stepping into another life. He slipped into the last row, tucked into shadow near the exit. A few heads turned. A woman whispered. A man shifted his chair away. James kept his eyes forward. The ceremony began. The anthem played. Everyone stood. James rose slowly, hand over heart, silently mouthing words he hadn't spoken in years. Admiral Hayes took the podium, gray hair tight in a bun, eyes sharp with 35 years of service behind them. Today, she said, we honor men who have earned the trident, not as a gift, not as inheritance, but through pain, fear, and the refusal to quit when every part of you demands it. James clenched his hands. He knew those words. He had lived them. The roll call began. One by one, graduates stepped forward. Each received their trident. Each shook her hand. Then came the tradition. Is there a SEAL present? Admiral Hayes asked. Who would like to pin this trident? Usually, it was a father, a brother, a mentor, someone who had walked the path before. James watched as fathers in crisp dress whites stepped forward, older SEALs with silvered beards and rows of ribbons, pinning tridents onto the next generation. Mentors honored students. Brothers honored brothers. Then the name echoed through the hall. Aiden Michael Colton, James, straightened instantly. Breath snagging in his chest. There he was. 20-3 years old. Taller than James remembered, broader through the shoulders, hair cut close, posture perfect, uniform sharp enough to cut glass. Aiden moved to the stage with steady confidence, eyes forward, back rigid with discipline. Admiral Hayes placed the trident in his palm, a tiny piece of gold. Light as air, heavy with meaning. Is there a SEAL present who would like to pin this trident? The auditorium fell silent. Aiden searched the crowd. His mother wasn't there. She'd lost her battle with cancer 3 years earlier. No uncles, no grandfathers. Just empty seats where family should have been. Then, from the back row deep in the shadows where no one had been, looking, a scarred hand lifted slowly. James hadn't planned it. It was instinct, a reflex older than training. As his arm rose, his sleeve slid back, exposing the ink on his forearm. The room froze. Aiden's eyes locked onto him. For a heartbeat, his expression emptied shock, wiping everything clean. Then his mouth trembled, his eyes flooded, and his voice rang out, clear enough for the front row to hear. Admiral, my father is here. Confusion flickered across Admiral Hayes' face. She glanced down at her roster. Aiden's father wasn't listed. She followed his gaze to the back of the room, and she saw him. *A. Homeless man standing in shadow. Clothes torn, hands still raised. The Admiral stepped down from the stage. The room held its breath. Families turned. Graduates leaned forward. Admiral Hayes walked slowly down the aisle, heels clicking against the polished floor. Until she stood in front of James, she took him in the grime beneath his nails, the hollowed cheeks, the weight of the streets clinging to him. Then she saw the tattoo. Her face drained of color, Her hand flew to her mouth. She staggered back half a step. "Reaper," she whispered. James nodded once. "Ma'am." The name rippled through the auditorium like fire through dry grass. Reaper. The Reaper of Fallujah. The legend. The ghost. The man who wasn't supposed to still exist. Admiral Hayes straightened. Then before 200 stunned witnesses she snapped to attention and delivered a full military salute. To a man dressed in rags. "Master, Chief Colton," she said, voice breaking. "We didn't know. We didn't know." James returned the salute, his hand shaking. Permission to approach, Admiral granted. He walked down the aisle as every eye followed him. Some families leaned away. Others stared in disbelief. But the SEALs, the instructors, the graduates, they stood. One by one, they rose to their feet. Aiden didn't wait. He leaped off the stage and ran sprinting down the aisle before crashing into his father with 6 years of grief and longing behind the impact. He wrapped James in his arms, buried his face into his shoulder, and broke. "Dad, I thought you were dead. I thought I lost you." James held him, rough hands cradling his son's head. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I thought you'd be better without me. I was never better without you." Behind them, Admiral Hayes wiped her eyes. Captain Moss stood frozen, clipboard abandoned on the floor. Then someone started clapping, one set of hands. Then another. Then another. In seconds, the entire auditorium was standing. Applause rolling like thunder. But James and Aiden heard none of it. For them, there was only each other. The mission was complete. But for James Colton, the real question had just begun. What do you do when the world suddenly remembers who you are? Admiral Hayes invited James onto the stage. He tried to refuse, but Aiden took his hand and pulled him forward. They climbed the steps. Together, the Admiral placed the trident in James's palm. "The honor is yours." "Master Chief." James looked down at the pin, then at his son standing tall in dress whites, with hands that had once destroyed strongholds and saved dying men. He carefully pinned the trident over Aiden's heart. "I wasn't there for a lot," James said softly, "but I am so proud of who you became." Aiden swallowed hard. "You were always there, Dad. You taught me what it meant to be a SEAL before I ever enlisted." The ceremony continued, but no one remembered the rest. They remembered the image of a father and son standing side by side, one in rags, one in uniform. Both warriors. Afterward, Admiral Hayes pulled James aside, no longer composed, but furious and ashamed. "How long have you been on the streets?" "6 years, ma'am." "And the VA?" "They tried. I fell through the cracks."
Right.
"That ends today. Housing, medical care, full psychological support. I'm assigning a liaison personally. I don't need charity." "It's not charity," she said sharply. "It's a debt." Captain Moss approached next. "Master Chief, I thought the stories were exaggerated. They probably were." "I doubt it." Moss paused. "We could use someone like you. Not in combat mentoring, consulting. These candidates need someone real." James glanced at Aiden, who nodded eagerly. "I'll think about it." That night, Aiden brought his father to his small apartment off base. 1 bedroom. A couch. A tiny kitchen. But it was warm, clean. Home. James hesitated in the doorway. "I don't want to be a burden. You're my dad. You're staying." End of discussion. They talked late into the night about Marcus, the nightmares, the years of silence, the guilt that had nearly destroyed them both. "I thought I was protecting you," James admitted. "I would have rather had you broken than gone," Aiden said. 2 weeks later, James moved into temporary veteran housing. Therapy followed. The nightmares softened. The guilt loosened its grip. He took the consulting job. He spoke to candidates not about glory, but about cost, about survival, about coming back. They listened not because he was a legend, but because he was honest. 6 months later, James stood before a room of young SEALs. "The fight doesn't end when you come home," he told them. And if you try to carry it alone, it will break you. Find one reason. One person. Hold on, a young candidate asked. How do you survive it? James smiled faintly. You don't alone. That night, James sat on the beach with Aiden as the sun sank into the Pacific. You doing okay, Dad? Yeah, James said. I think I am. James Colton never chased recognition, but he carried something better now: hope, purpose, and a second chance. The only easy day was yesterday, but today was worth fighting for.